Summary: Love is Blind Season 6 explores multiple love triangles that are difficult for viewers to follow. Jimmy struggles to choose between his relationships with Jessica and Chelsea, ultimately proposing to Chelsea. Chelsea is torn between Jimmy and Trevor, but ultimately chooses Jimmy, leaving Trevor heartbroken. Love is Blind Season 6 had more love triangles explored on the series than ever before, but the two primary entanglements that were featured on the show are somewhat tricky for viewers to follow. After seasons of following the romantic connections formed in the pods, Love is Blind Season 6 had a different look at some new relationships for viewers. The cast of new singles was ready to mingle and find someone who they could see a future with, but as connections were made, some singles found themselves interested in more than one person. Though it didn't always come out, when it did there was conflict within the living quarters. Although Love is Blind Season 6 cast as an eclectic group of singles, May had similar ideas in what they were hoping for in a partner. For the majority of the Charlotte, North Carolina-based cast members, they were hoping for someone with strong values and ideals who they could build a future with. For cast members like Jimmy, Jessica, Chelsea, and Trevor, it appeared they found more than one person who could fulfill their innermost needs. For others, like AD and Amber, the person they were interested in was too good to be true. Related 20 Best Reality TV Shows. Right now television is being impacted by the ongoing entertainment industry strikes, leaving many turning to reality TV. What are the best shows right now? Jimmy had a difficult time choosing between Chelsea-Jessica. He was torn between the women close. While Jimmy's connections on Love is Blind Season 6 both seemed to be genuine, he had a hard time choosing between his relationship with Jessica and his relationship with Chelsea. He found different strengths in both relationships, feeling that there were merits to each of them as he continued in the experience. With Jessica, Jimmy had a serious connection that pushed him to be a somewhat less domineering version of himself. When he first met Jessica, it appeared that Jimmy was set on her being his final pick after just a few meetings, but after she revealed she had a 10-year-old daughter, things changed. Jimmy was overwhelmed by the idea that Jessica had to be so present in someone else's life. In caring for her daughter, Autumn, Jimmy felt that he could be trapped in a way that impeded his overall independence. He saw the exact opposite with Chelsea, a flight attendant who had already invited him to travel with her. While Jimmy was open to his relationship with Jessica, he was far more intrigued by the vision of his future with Chelsea. Though he was challenged by Jessica, he wound up choosing the route he felt more comfortable with, deciding to propose to Chelsea, who he could have a bit more control over. Chelsea-Jimmy's relationship seems fragile. He appears to still have feelings for Jessica. Although he wound up choosing Chelsea, it doesn't appear that Jimmy's feelings for Jessica have dissipated entirely. While Chelsea was dealing with a choice of her own, Jimmy's choice between her and Jessica was a difficult one. Jessica, who had revealed that she was in love with Jimmy and wanted to move forward with him, had been very direct in the way she explained her situation, feelings, and how she felt about the future. It was off-putting for Jimmy, who was clearly used to a woman being more demure and allowing him to take the lead. While Jessica's personality was intriguing for Jimmy, it scared him a bit too much. Despite the fact that he was hopeful in his relationship with Chelsea being something more his speed, Jimmy's engagement with his Love is Blind Season 6 counterpart is fragile. It appears that both Chelsea and Jimmy have things they need to work on regarding the other people they met in the pods, and on top of that, it seems that they need to figure out where they connect more. Jimmy may have decided to propose to Chelsea, but it's likely he's not over the other woman he was with just moments before he got down on one knee. Chelsea wasn't sure if she wanted Jimmy or Trevor. She was hopeful the men would choose for her. While Jimmy was struggling with his feelings for two women, Chelsea was dealing with a split between two men. She was hopeful about her relationship with Jimmy, who reminded her of a somewhat more mature version of the men she'd dated in the past. Chelsea shared that her relationship with Jimmy was reminiscent of guys she's known before, but that he had a whole new layer of maturity and sincerity in the way he spoke to her. The pair bonded over travel, but realized their similar values may ultimately be a good match. On the other hand, Chelsea's other match may have been a better fit. Trevor, who Chelsea met early on in the pod experience, was a great match for the flight attendant from the start. While he wasn't like men she usually dated, Trevor's sweet, attentive nature made it clear that he was one of the good ones. He did his best to be open and honest with her and shared a side of himself he'd never been so vulnerable with before. Trevor was unlike anyone Chelsea knew, so she was nervous about choosing him, as she wasn't sure what to expect. She shared she would have accepted a proposal from either guy, it was more the matter of who got to her first. Trevor was gutted that Chelsea didn't pick him. He graciously let Chelsea go. Although it felt like a given that Trevor would be the person Chelsea chose in the end, it was a shock to viewers to find that she met with Jimmy first. When he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him, Chelsea was clearly overwhelmed. She was quiet for some time before accepting, and it seemed like she wasn't exactly sold on her decision in the moment. She explained to Jimmy that it was going to be hard to let Trevor down, but it was obvious he didn't fully understand where she was coming from. While Chelsea was accepting his proposal, she was still thinking of Trevor. Ultimately, Chelsea let Trevor down and shared that she was engaged to Jimmy. Tearfully, Trevor was gracious and sweet in the way he spoke to her, sharing that he was disappointed and confused, but had to respect her decision. He wished her luck and happiness, hopeful that someday in the future they'd be able to meet and get to know each other, even if only as friends. Trevor was visibly hurt, asking Chelsea if she could leave him alone to shed a few tears in the pod. While she was hesitant, she knew she'd made her choice and had to leave him behind. Matthew two-timed AD and Amber. He said the same things to both women alternately. AD and Amber were both talking to the same guy in the pods, a man named Matthew who came into the series understanding that his personality wasn't really made for a show like Love is Blind. While Matthew was fit and well-spoken, he was difficult to talk to and had a hard time opening up about his emotions. Matthew opened up to AD on camera in a way that felt like a sweet, humbling experience. AD was falling for him hard but couldn't be sure that he was the right person for her. As she tried to crack open his tough shell, she realized she was falling for him. As Amber started to realize that she was feeling something real for Matthew, she decided to check in with the other women in the pods to see if he had connections with anyone else. When she discussed her relationship with Amber, she found out that Matthew had been saying nearly identical things to both women about how he was feeling about them. AD had originally felt special about the way Matthew was speaking to her, but ultimately found herself crushed that he'd gotten her to be vulnerable with him when he wasn't actually being truthful with her. Neither woman chose to be with Matthew. AD went on to accept Clay's proposal. D chose to confront Matthew head-on, knowing Amber had already left Love is Blind after learning that Matthew had been two-timing them. She shared what she'd found out and asked him to explain himself, but Matthew wasn't able to give much clarity about his indiscretion. While he said that he had repeated himself to both women on occasion, he tried to backtrack and tell D that he'd said things to her that weren't ever said to Amber. Despite his attempts to smooth things over, D couldn't continue things with Matthew. He chose to leave Love is Blind and eventually D found a connection with Clay. Love is Blind Season 6 airs new episodes weekly each Wednesday on Netflix.